I'm an urban designer and landscape architect. I teach urban design at the New School, teach undergrads and graduates, and my approach to urban design is through ecology and also landscape architecture, which is my training. And I'm here with Timon McPhearson.
Hi, everybody. I am an urban ecologist, and as an urban ecologist, it means I'm sort of classically trained as an ecologist and a sort of biophysical scientist, so PhD scientist in that way. But I work with Victoria, and people like Victoria quite a bit because in urban ecology, you really have to think about everything in the system. So I think about buildings and people and pollinators and soil microbes and air quality, and all of these things are part of the urban system in my work, which makes it very challenging and really exciting and fun. And so I think one of the reasons I'm in this space with Victoria is because we like to overlap between sort of landscape architecture and design and ecology as a sort of interesting place to see what's happening in the city.
So as a way to start to think about the microbes and the air and the pollinators, we identified 3 urban forms in this area. The first space she called the billboard space. And so these are the medium blue spaces here on the map. And these are like 1-story or 2-story buildings that have a lot of billboards on top. The second space she called the sandwich space, and there's one over here, which is often where there are 2 large buildings on either side and a little short one in the middle. And these are often in the middle of the block. And so there are many of those in this area too. The third space is the type of space that sort of makes up this whole area, which was a result of the 1916 zoning regulation for New York City, which was based on bringing light and air down into the street. So the rule is that after a certain height, the buildings have to step back. So there's one behind you over here. You see how it steps back. So the idea for that was to start to allow the light and the air into the street.
So there's a number of these as we walk along. It's not unique to the Garment District, but it's interesting in this space just how many of these exist. And when you really look at them, how they're not really used for almost anything. Yeah.
So this is another sandwich space here, but this is a good one to look at because you can see that the setbacks are also in the back of the buildings as well. So you've got all these terraces we can see from the front, but sort of what they call the belly of the block also has a lot of the setback spaces too.
There's a lot of species that are in the city. We don't necessarily have to plant them all. You know, there's a lot of very natural colonization that can happen in these kinds of spaces if we provide just a little bit of investment, really minor investment. So it's another thing, when you see these giant flat spaces, there's a lot of opportunity there. We could think about working backwards from goals like improving public health, increasing stormwater absorption, decreasing the urban heat island effect in the city, increasing the biodiversity, increasing opportunities for environmental education. If you take those goals and you work backwards from them, you realize that you need much more connected green space in the city. And so that's one of the things we wanted to draw is what's the potential, and we can think about it at many levels, from a moss garden to a forest and everything in between.
The way it works is that you draw through. Do you see? It's not like sketching like this, yeah? You trace through.
And when the tree falls, then trees sprout out of the tree. So I want to have the logs all the way around the edge of this. I'm going to dedicate it to Mary, this piece. But they're going to be logs all the way around the edge. And then the trees will be planted, and they really will grow just the way this moss. I mean, who could have imagined that so much moss was growing up here?
So I sort of traced this vantage point in yellow, and my idea was to have like these vertically running hydroponics, I guess, on the leading corners of buildings, collect rainwater and like delay the water so it's a very slow drip down.
So I started off with things like fire escapes and tops of buildings and setbacks and sub-setbacks and all those basic spaces. But then I started thinking, well, what if they were moving, and what if they were like bees, so the seeds get to move? So I started putting them on tops of cars and putting them next to on the sidewalk, with the idea that the sidewalk would then be producing something that would jump on the cars and move on to other things.
The edges really caught my eye, and I guess permaculture, those are those places that are the richest ecologies of all, the edges of things, but they didn't seem to be functional here. So I was thinking tubular, if we sort of imagine the building as alive, could be a source of conveying food for the building, whatever that might be.
All the rooftops could have some sort of plant material growing for insects and birds. You could also perhaps have bird feeding stations or platforms for nests somehow. And then perhaps even to raise awareness like we are here, you could have a kite flying contest where that on top of roofs you would have like this children's kite flying day where everybody would become somehow all of a sudden aware of the fact that there are rooftops.